So I've been introduced. I want to tell you something important, and that is that you are in the room and you have chosen to inform yourselves about our organization and how it chooses to organize itself. So we all have this idea at some point in our past that we wanted to become a professional planner, and then we learned how to jump through the hoops to become a professional planner, and for the vast majority of our membership, that's all that happens. But there's a whole machinery behind the scenes that is about making decisions about who gets to join the club, what you have to go through to join the club, and then of course there's a whole bunch of clubs across Canada, and how do they organize themselves to support us in our work out in the public with the public as professional planners. So this is a very important discussion, and do not for a minute think that it's not important based on the number of people that are in the room. At the conference just a few short weeks ago in Kananaskis, we had a record attendance of 277 participants. We had a session on this. 16 people showed up. Half of those 16 people were already on APPI Council or CIP Council, so it was like half of us were already engaged. The remaining 8, 3 of those are already in this stuff up to their eyeballs and know exactly what's going on, and 5 people showed up knowing nothing. So this is very good to have this number of people in the room that you've chosen to be engaged in your profession. And I know some of you are here for CPL units, and whatever it takes, that's just fine. So here's what I'm going to do over the next few minutes, over our lunch hour, is I'm going to make a presentation, and I'm going to stop now and again, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on what's happening in our relationship as APPI with CIP. Just going to name what has happened so far, what's happening now, and then what's happening next. That's kind of the trajectory of things. So the basic background is CIP Council did a strategic plan, and that means we need to have some new articles of continuance and new bylaws. The articles of continuance are we last did them in 1923 as a national organization, and they have to be filed with Industry Canada. We just did a redo of those, so that's part of delivering the strategic plan. For many, many years, and Greg Hoffman in the room, Greg, if you would just raise your hand so we know who you are. Greg slaved on the national scene on the Planning for the Future, which was a national effort to coordinate affiliate work on setting the standards to be a member and on the standards for accreditation of planning schools. So that was a really big effort that took like 7-8 years, and we're just now figuring out what that all adds up to, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then of course there's the absolute basic new federal legislation, and there is stuff CIP needs to change to meet the legislation. So those 3 things basically said to CIP Council, a year or 2 ago, you have to change things. So we are responsible to do that. So in terms of what happened, we did a research paper. It was massive, and we got some legal advice to figure out which way to go. We had 3 governance workshops so far in this year. So in January, April, and in July, CIP Council took the unprecedented effort to bring in the governance expertise across the country around how our affiliates run the planning profession in the country. So we brought together all of the presidents and the executive directors and CIP Council, so the people in today's context who know how the regulation of the profession takes place, all in one room to start duking out and figuring out, so what is needed for the profession in Canada today. So we ended up, all of those parties, with a proposal to put to the membership, which is what's circulating right now and what is called CIP Realigns. Part of the background work in those workshops for CIP Council was to name the purpose of CIP now, and we did that in what's called the Articles of Continuance. Now, some but not all of you will have voted in the spring for the Articles of Continuance, and it was approved by the membership. 94% of the membership approved this, but I do have to tell you and be brutally honest that 13% of the membership actually came out to vote. 13. So while yes, it's nice to say 94% were in approval of it, it's also very sad that 13% of our membership came out to vote. So that was the first piece that came along here. And I'm just going to zip through several slides here to tell you what 94% of that 13% actually approved, because it is important. So we have stated in our articles of continuance that the primary function of the Canadian Institute of Planning, and yes, there's a name change there, is to promote and advance the value of planning in Canada. So that's what the membership approved. And there are a number of purposes. I've just got one per slide here, and I'm going to go pretty quick, so just make do. But one of the purposes is to create awareness in the value of planning and the role of the professional planner in representing the public interest. And that public interest piece is new. Another purpose is to serve as a nationwide forum for knowledge sharing about planning and related issues in the broadest sense. To conduct research and advocate positions on planning issues of national significance. To serve as the national voice of Canadian planning, both nationally but also internationally. To provide services and support the provincial and territorial institutes and associations as needed and requested. And to conduct research and advocate positions on planning issues of national significance. So another purpose is to make CIP's knowledge sharing services available to the broader planning community. So bigger than just planners, there's information out there for the public as well. And then last, this one is a little bit of a technical thing, but we also want CIP to be able to receive gifts that can be bestowed onto different aspects of the work of CIP. So those are by and large pretty motherhood statements, which I'm sure is why they got 94% approval. What they are, though, is the result of extensive work to figure out and name clearly what is the role of CIP as a national body, differentiated from what is the role of APPI and its sister and brother organizations whose job it is to regulate the profession. And this is a very important distinction that we've made at this point in time. So just to be perfectly clear, I'm going to say that in a different way. Your route into the profession, your route into the club is through APPI, because APPI is the body that regulates the profession, as does PIBC, SPPI, etc. across the country. CIP does not set the standards, the affiliates do. And you'll notice a change in language here that we've dropped the word affiliate. I use it from time to time out of bad practice, but a better word that we found, or we're trying to use, or at least it's a collection of words actually, is provincial and territorial institutes and associations. And the reason why it's institute and associations is some are still associations, but also to recognize that when we're looking nationally, it's the provincial and territorial institutes and associations that regulate the profession. And now that we know and recognize this, then what's left for CIP? And that is what's named in the Articles of Continuance and those slides I just zipped through.